parties, and she all had a chance to have a look at her wonderful seascapes. So we're in this beautiful castle, which I gather built by Sir Galsworthy Gurney. His wife didn't like it.
Oh, I didn't really.
Yeah, so she was not a fan of this place, so she moved out to Manchester and got them to move. So, but I like it. It's very nice and beautiful. So the aim today, originally, it was going to be me asking Sue questions, some of which have come from people and some of which were mine. But basically, as we're such a small group, if anybody wants to interrupt or join in or get some installation on something, just do it, because it's quite an informal setup, I think.
Yeah, we wanted it to be just quite informal. It's the first time I've done it, and just thought it was quite nice to do around paintings.
So we'll start off with the first question did come in. There are some seats around, someone.
We'll come into the middle and put one in the middle if you want to.
Yeah, that might be better.
Yes.
Right, and Sue appears to be filming us, but I think she's filming.
I don't even know if it will work. I'm recording it, so I've never tried it before, and I'll probably just take one photograph from it, and then but nobody minds if I'm just I can only see the back of you from there anyway. So hopefully it's directed at me.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Okay. So I suppose my first question, Sue, was looking around obviously these are all seascapes.
Yeah.
When did you first become aware of the connection to the sea? Because that comes across in these paintings that you're very close to the sea. When did you first notice it? How old were you?
I think, I grew up on a farm, so we were very, very busy on the farm all the time. And Mum and Dad took in visitors as well, so there was harvesting and they did bed and breakfast. And I used to be taken off by a lot of the visitors on day trips to Wigley Bay usually. That seemed to be the favourite beach. And then we would go whenever we could as well. My Auntie Phil and Auntie Eunice had a lovely beach hut at Wigley, near the salt house, where there's only one there now, but they're all covered. They used to have to scrape all the sand away every summer, because the sand would just build right up to the windows. And we used to go out there quite a lot. So I always loved the sea, loved being in the sea, and just a connection to water. But I don't think I really realised how deep that connection was until I actually started painting. And I started some watercolour classes, some like daytime classes at the Gregson Centre with a lady. I'm trying to remember her name. I can't remember it now. But it wasn't too formulaic the way she taught. So she encouraged us to paint what we wanted to paint and not really worry about it too much. And I've always thought, well, the sea is going to be so hard to paint.
It is.
Maybe it is. So I thought, I've just got to give it a go. And then I started to look at other artists. And I just sort of started playing around with the paint and painting it more and more. But I think also when I had my boys, moving from the farm and out of that very much more rural landscape, moving down to Victoria Road, which is near Crooker's Beach. We were just so close to the beach. We used to walk down every evening or every weekend. We were there. Boys had their birthday parties, on the beach. They very much got into surfing and surf club members. So I was on the beach a lot. And I think it was that time, and you'd have your favourite little spots. And down at Crooker's, you can walk to North Cornwall, which is a favourite walk. But just at the top of Crooklets, you can drop down to what I call Wrangles. So apparently it's called traffic lights, it's called tank stop beach, it's called all sorts of names. But you could escape the crowds and you literally just drop down into there. It's almost like a tiny little cove that sort of holds you in. And I think I just used to sit there and just listen to the sea and just look at it. So there's been a lot of time just not really studying it, but just absorbing it. And I do feel like my brain is full of, it's like a little filing cabinet of little images and glimpses that I've got, and they're all in there, and then I can just like pull them back if I want to.
That's one of the amazing things about it, I think the sound of it as well as the sight of it.
Yeah.
You get the sense of power, don't you, which comes across when you're kind of way the pictures here.
Yes, yeah, and a lot of these come from actually being in the scene. And it wasn't until I was painting them like this, and then somebody, I don't think they directly asked me why I painted them like that, but they were questioning me about the painting, and I hadn't really thought about it. I just painted it as I saw it. But I realised that it's that moment when I'm going into the sea and into the waves. And it's that excitement, it's that, like, there's a wave coming at you, and
Not terror.
Yes, yeah, it's excitement, not terror. And it's like, do I dive under it, do I catch it, or do I turn my back to it? And it was all those things that I think I just do automatically, that maybe that comes over, just that point of when I'm looking at that wave comes over in these paintings in particular that are much closer up to a wave than a more landscape viewpoint.
Yes, instinctive. So your current exhibition, the one that you've got now in the castle, is called Belonging.
Yeah.
Where did that
I was at yoga, and at the end of the yoga session, this was last, basically it was a bit of background. This show was booked last September, October, and then about October, November, I had to submit a title and some detail. So it was like, right, what? I knew roughly what I wanted to paint, and every year I've managed to come up with a different title. And I really it wasn't that I'd run out of titles, I just wasn't really sure what the whole show was going to be about, because I hadn't really got any paintings. In fact, I'm trying to think, the shore break is probably, and the mist over Wyndham Bay were the only two that were painted at that time, so everything else is new. And I was at yoga, and at the end she does a bit of a reading, and she read this poem by John Donahue, I think it's Irish, and he'd written this poem called Belonging, which actually at the end, maybe, I think I've got a copy of it in the comments book, I'm hoping but he talked about, there's a line, I might just have to go read the last line because I can't remember it. Basically, the last line, the poem was all about belonging, but the last line of the poem was, if you can hear me, may you allow the wild beauty of the invisible world to gather you, mind you, and embrace you in belonging. And I just thought, it wasn't about, it was that connection with nature, and it wasn't really about belonging to beauty or anywhere specific. But if you felt calm and peace within yourself, and you were at one more with nature, whether it's to see or in nature, it just gave you a really deep sense of belonging.
Yes, a sense of tranquility.
Yeah, and so I thought, there's my point, because whenever maybe I'm sat in a lot of these viewpoints, whether they come from sketches or living in the sea, there was that real sense of like belonging.
Great stuff. I've got a few questions about technique. And one of them is about your camper van. I gather Sue has a camper van called Daphne. I don't know if any of you know this. And we see lots of pictures of Sue in Daphne. So I'm just in Daphne.
It's on my social media, like Instagram, and I try and go to get Daphne.
You try and get Daphne in. So has Daphne changed the way you work?
I think it has a little bit, much more recently, because I've been out in Daphne a lot more, and I've been doing a lot more sketches and using gouache and oil bar and what else have I used? Inks. And so I think, and it's given me a bit of shelter apart from anything, because I think a lot of people say when I paint, you know, the summer isn't the best time to be getting photographs or getting inspiration for painting, because it's just too nice, it's too blue.
Yeah.
Everything's too blue, everything's too perfect, and It's those winter days when the sun's quite low or the sun's going down, and maybe, you know, it's a bit windy, and on this coast we know all about the wind. You know, we get a lot of wind. So for me it was about getting the elements into my paintings and getting that sense of movement as well, in the waves or wind. And being outside, trying to paint or do anything is just not conducive to that at all. So having Daphne's meant I could park up at Northcote, or Widmouth or anywhere and have the side door open. I've got a nice little platform, I can sit on the floor, I can set up all my paints, and I can just sit in there.
Studio.
And it is very much like a mobile studio. So when we designed it, we set it up with that in mind, like a mobile beach hut as much as anything. But I've definitely got little spaces for my brushes, I make sure I always carry water, and my paints and my sketchbooks in there all the time.
Do you have a favourite place to paint? Is there like a favourite beach, for example? Is there some favourite area?
Yeah, I've always said it's funny because although I used to go to Widmouth Bay as a child a lot, and Widmouth Bay is beautiful. It's just got that real sense of space and expanse, I think, which is lovely. That's where my heart sort of felt anywhere. I never went there as a child, very rarely, but it has to be Northcote Mount. And I think it's
Why? Not like
no. I mean, it's quite rocky. I mean, it's great. I love belly boarding or getting in the waves at Northcote because often it tends to be quieter.
Yeah.
It's a nice sort of destination beach because from where I live, I can walk across the beach or the cliffs, and you arrive at Northcote. And so that feels nice. And I think because it feels so unchanged. Because there's no major building apart from Margaret changing her ice cream can about 3 years ago. It hasn't changed. But obviously the Atlantic's played some part in that. You know, it rushes in. It feels very much. It's a place where the Atlantic and it feels very much on the edge, but it sort of hugs you as well because you have to drive down into it. And I love the vista when you're driving along and you've got those lovely hedges and there's lots of flower and stuff in the hedges. And then you just drop down to it. Yeah. And I think also possibly because Tom, my eldest, was a lifeguard there for a number of years, and so I used to go out there, drop off cake, do whatever. So maybe there's a bit of an attachment because of that. But I still go out there quite a lot, and it's quite an easy to access and easy to escape to. So it is lovely.
You mentioned putting your paints and so on indefinitely. Do you ever just, because sometimes you see people at the beach, don't you, with an easel and paints and I'm thinking, they're doing it. Do you ever actually just go to the beach with a bag full of stuff and paint, or do you do drawings?
No, I tended to do very quick sketches more now, is what I do, because I think I know it more, so rather than I do a very quick sketch to get maybe a cliff outline, or often in a lot of them there isn't even that. Yeah. It's more about just getting a sense or a feeling of being there at that time, so they tend to be much more just splodges of paint, or I move it around my fingers, or it's just trying to get the light in the sky or the clouds. But I have painted outside. In fact, one canvas I did a few years ago, I just had Kurt Jackson was like loved his paintings and followed him for a long time. I still look at his paintings and go down and see what he's doing. But I didn't use my feet. I mean, he uses his feet, he looks at them a lot. But I did get a lot of emulsion paint and a big canvas and literally splashed it around and used seawater and then had that stretched. And that was very successful. It worked. But when I look at that painting now, because of some friends, actually I've got two like that, I know both of them are, and they work, but they still feel a bit too much like sketches. Right. And it's not that they don't feel finished, I just think my work's got a lot more depth now to it and a lot more layers. So sometimes I would still use that as a starting point, but I think I would push the boundaries a bit more on it, but remember that feeling of being there.
Yeah.
So even though I work back in the studio on most of my pieces, or they start in the studio, it's very much a memory of being on the beach in that place. So I almost feel, even though I'm not on the beach physically painting it, I am transported there in my mind. That's where I am working.
I tend to think of you as a large canvas painter, and I tend to prefer your big pictures. That's just my personal preference, but which do you prefer? Large or small?
I do like working on the large ones. There's something about the freedom of using the whole arm and standing over it. I feel like there's more energy in the paintings than the big ones.
Less constraint?
Less constrained, and maybe it feels like the materials or the paints I can play with more. I can experiment and let them move around the canvas a lot more. Whereas on a smaller piece, it feels I'm held almost by the edges.
Yeah.
Whereas on a canvas, it feels way over the edges. And I think it's just a much broader movement. I tend to be stood. Whereas on although I did enjoy doing, so maybe I like the contrast because I do like working on the big ones, but the smaller panels, that's quite a new thing. I had done some a while ago, but I started using some cold wax, which I'm actually trying to put me on a little views. And I only just, but it made the oils dry quickly. I do love oil paint. There is something about oil. Although several of these are mixed media.
That was actually my next question. It was, you seem to mix media quite often. I was wondering which was your favourite. Is it oil?
I don't think, I do like oil. Oil blends and you can get some beautiful soft colours and some new colours that as the oil blends, it just produces like beautiful soft hues of a completely new colour that has no name at all, but it can shift through from like mauve to pink, but with a hint of sort of going from grey to green to coming out the other side. So it just really shifts, and you can make that shift, and quite accidental shifts sometimes that just that colour just looks amazing. And I think you can get colour pop as well with a lot of other colours, but oils, maybe it's the quality of the oils. Maybe the quality is a lot more people with the colour sometimes and that. But although having said that, sometimes with the acrylics I can get quite a lot of like colour bouncing off each other.
Yes.
And that's not always planned, it's usually accidental. And then it's like, whoa, I really like what's happened to that colour. But I think in terms of materials, I quite like the mixed media because not all, usually, nearly all these paintings, even the Dawn over Camby, that was going to be a painting over the look. I got oil paint left over from another painting, and it was on a rag, and it was quite terps and wet, and I just printed with the rag, and it left lots of lovely blue print. And within that print, it took about 3 weeks, and it was sat at the side, and I got Open Studios, and I was doing other pieces, and I was sort of, people were coming in and out, and I was doing things. And then I looked at it one day, and I think because I know a lot of the promontories along the coast, and I thought, that just looks like Canby. I just recognised it at Crackington, and I looked at a photo, and it was just like the double point, and when it drops down, it was just Canby. So I changed it, so it became, yeah, it was by accident, and most of them have come out of accidents, and I quite like that fluidity of being able to change, and maybe not having any particular direction in the painting, and just seeing what the paint does. And then finding a bit of a point or something in it that reminds me of something, and that finding all those images, and then I'll think, well, that's what I'm going to move on into.
So you obviously love painting. I mean, I think that's coming across, isn't it, in the way way you're talking. Does painting make you feel? Does it make you feel excited? Or does it calm you down? I've tried watercolours once and that sort of calmed me down. While I was focusing on what I was doing, it calmed me. Then I saw what I'd done and it...
yeah. Well, I think you can say it's all those emotions actually. And sometimes it can be incredible frustration when it doesn't go right and you end up scraping half of it off and then something comes underneath. But I think I've learned to feel more confident with the paint, so that if that happens, I'm never afraid to I always think something will happen, something exciting will come out of it, even if I know it's gone wrong. And I've learned to go beyond, there's times when I shall be painting, especially watercolour, you can become quite precious about something, and there's a little bit you become quite focused on and you want to save because it looks so lovely. And sometimes I end up working around that bit and then I have to sacrifice it and I know it has to go.
Right, yeah.
Just to push beyond it, and then I know I have that sort of feeling that it will be okay. So you get that frustration, like a bit of disappointment, and then you learn to sacrifice it, but then you come out the other side because something usually better comes out of it, and then you get excited about it again. So I think it's a constant roller coaster of all sorts of emotion.
Do you ever start anything and just think this is just, it's got to get thrown away or paint over it or something?
Right, yes, in fact I've just done that. I had a big aluminium and I've got this idea. I've done a painting on very abstract of a sun and it was much more abstract and I wanted to try and recreate it. And that was probably my mistake because I tried to recreate it and it wasn't really working. And then I decided it looked like the sun reflecting in the rock pool. But it was not something that I've ever really done that sort of thing before. And I put on so much paint and the colour just wasn't coming. And I thought, like I just said, I am not giving up with this. And I just kept going and going. And then 2 days ago, I thought I pushed it as far as I can. I know something else will come out of it because I think all that paint has created an incredible texture somewhere. It's just waiting to come out of that painting again. But I have just painted it out with Prussian blue and some white oil and a rag and just wiped over the whole thing. So sort of 4 months of every week putting some paint on it has completely gone.
That makes us all feel ever so slightly better, doesn't it? We've all done stuff. So, how would you describe yourself as an artist? If somebody asked you to kind of pigeonhole yourself into a category,
That is a tough one because I don't think I'd want to pigeonhole myself as, and I don't think, even if I try to describe what I do, it's sort of impressionist, it's a bit expressionist, I think I'm a bit of a colourist. All those things are important, but I think it's more, hopefully, it's more of an energy and it's bringing energy, all the elements in motion, sort of waves, sea, sky. So I don't think I pigeonhole myself at all, I don't even know. Sometimes I think it's a question to always ask other people rather than describe myself. And I'm just wondering
why they love you.
Because, and I think that's when I've learned most about myself and why I do it and what I do is when I have conversations with other people. And someone will say something or see something in it. I think, and I can connect with that. I think that's why I do it, or that's what it's about. So I describe myself as an artist. I think just passionate about what I'm doing, but always, but experimenting as well, and still I've got lots of things and ideas that I want to do. So never static. She's never static.
Just a couple more or two about that video, I think. And this is more about the learning process, I suppose. So I think you're self-taught pretty much. I know you said you went to some classes years ago. What do you think is the best way to learn to paint? Because there's probably lots of us sitting here thinking, no, I'd love to be able to do this. I never will, but it'd be nice to try.
Yeah.
What's the best way to learn? Is it just get on with it and try it yourself, go to classes?
I think possibly there's a mix of both. I think a lot of people ask me if I do classes and do I do workshops and classes, and I've asked a couple of people and people that want to come, I think they want to learn some of my technique and they want to learn to paint the sea, but I think everyone has a unique sort of way of working, and I'm quite, I don't know, I find it hard to run a workshop. I think it's people's expectations of what they're going to come out with. I'd like people to find their own creativity and their own way of working, and not to be judging their own work thinking, oh, this is terrible, it doesn't come up to standards, because whose standard is it coming up to? And just to actually do what I've learned to do, which is play with paint.
Yes.
Really, and experiment and find accidents. And a lot of it is happy accidents, and it might not look like accidents, but most of them have evolved or changed from what I've set out to do.
Right.
So they've changed, and maybe that's just part of me that's, coming out like brushes. It's everything working together. I think it is a real alchemy of like the paint. There's a bit of technique and the stuff you learn, and I'm still learning all the time. So you can't just, suddenly begin to paint, but you have to let go of a part of yourself to allow yourself to do that. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't want to do. They want to learn technique.
They want to be in
control.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you have to let go and move beyond that.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Some people do. Some people are very technical and very controlled artists.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, but often you find those are the people that want to try and let go. And I don't know if they ever can, because I think they quite like something that's got a line or more form in it.
Yes. What structures
Yeah.
work with. Yeah. Okay. A tip for any artists here then is probably, are there any artists here? Yeah. I've got the glasses on, so I don't know who anyone is, which is wonderful. I was just going to ask you, how do you make your waves so dynamic? Because when I came to the preview and I was here looking, particularly this lot here, these lots here really well, and I'm just thinking, yeah, it's almost, you feel like you're almost in the sea.
Yeah.
As you look at them. And you did mention that they're much more close
Yeah.
to you than some of the other pictures that you've painted. How do you make it look like that sea is actually coming to meet you?
I suppose it's giving that 3 dimension, and there's certain things like in this one and that one that I've learned. It's not a formula in any sense, but I've learned some techniques to create that reflection on the water, to make it look really watery.
Yeah.
And it's using maybe not pure paint and not really using a paintbrush. In fact, I think apart from spattering some paint, a paintbrush has probably hardly touched
So what do you use?
any of these. A rag, there's a lot of rags used, and sometimes I'll put paint on, and then I'll use, and it depends on the rag, it has to be a really old tea towel is the best thing, that's a bit crunchy and hard, and I'll just hit the canvas and it drags paint off. So it's a way of removing paint, but it will leave lines, and it will leave a more subtle sort of like touch on it, and it drags it. And then I'll put some mediums into the paint so it gives a bit more transparency. and some inks go on top. I use rag to remove it. There's a lot of palette knife, and I've got some big knives as well for scraping it across. So I think like on this wave and that wave, there's a lot more of my fingers and movement, and then removing paint, but then getting dark underneath the bottom of the wave to make it look like it's coming over the top. And then spattering, but through this, after the paint's been spattered, I'll move that with a spatula or drag it to get lines, and then maybe a dry brush sometimes to brush it down, and then drag across again, just to get that reflective like wet sand.
That sounds quite experimental.
Yeah.
Just give this a go, but you somehow come out with this amazing.
Yes, yeah, and there's some techniques I've learned with that. But this one was, I just felt like I needed another piece, and because that one, I was never happy with that one particularly.
I'm supposed to tell people.
So I
She wasn't happy.
But then I did, but then I knew I wanted to produce another piece that sort of had something of the essence of that, and it was that, and that one was actually done quite quickly, and I had it a couple, normally, and I say my paintings take me a couple of months by the time I turn them around, or then I look at them again, or I'll add a bit more, do something else. But that was painted over 2 days. And it started, if you look at it, some of it does look quite watery, and it was started off with just inks, acrylic inks, and a lot of spraying water, running it off and moving it around, and then emulsion paint. I've got some lovely, it's a great way of playing with paint, is emulsion tester pots.
Oh, really?
And get it on a sponge or a palette knife, and just like imagine, and that was imagining I was in the sea and seeing the way the water moves and the waves were. And because the way the oil, the ink, had dried, I sort of thought, well, I want to make it look, have more movement there, bring a big swish across this bit, but then let the sky look like it's settling down on this edge.
It's very powerful, that one, isn't it?
Yeah, and then it was a case of getting some, by adding some white on water, you sort of manipulate and change some of those colours, and some of them mix and some don't. So, and then it just had to get to a point where I just left it, because you could say, you know, if you were a perfectionist, there's some areas where people would want it tidied up, you know, tidy up this bit, but I knew it would just change the whole energy of it, and I just had to leave it there. And actually, I'm really pleased with that now, and it does feel like it is just that, there's a lot of energy in it, in that movement.
Can't tidy up the sea too.
You can't, thank you. You see, that's the perfect thing.
Yes.
So that's something I was like, can't tidy up. There's always
Something like that. I'm just thinking, is this from the file and draw cabinet thing in your head, or do you take photographs and see sort of
well, I think, well, on that one, because the ink, when I sprayed the ink, maybe I knew that I wanted all that movement in the water, and I wanted a bit of a sort of like something showing like the wind catching a wave and moving it across. So even when I was moving it, I had that in mind, but when it dried, then that sort of dictated where I was going to put my next layers of paint. So it wasn't from a photograph at all. No, no. In fact, none of them have come from photographs at all, but sometimes, like the light wall across the scriptlets with the, in the middle at the back, obviously there's the breakwater in it, and there's a bit of rapids in the cliff. So then I did look at photographs because I wanted to make sure I got that pretty accurate, because I think that was quite an iconic sort of piece of land. But Northcote, I think I can probably, it looks like the dragon, but in my mind now I can picture it, and there isn't one of Northcote here particularly, but I've done it before, but I think I could do it blindfolded, just the shape of the cliff and the height, and yeah, so familiar with it.
Last question for me, but the project son, and this one came from somebody sent this to you.
Yeah, he did, he was going to come, but he's not here.
Right. He asked, as an experienced, successful artist, what advice would you give to an emerging artist about promoting your work?
Which was quite a good question. I think a lot of people would ask that as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I'm the best person to ask. I mean, I was sort of a bit out of Bude. I haven't really moved, because I paint Bude and this coast, and I'm known sort of here for doing it. I haven't really moved out of Bude too much.
Yes.
Um,
Not to promote it elsewhere.
But I think he was asking in a sense because there's a lot of people painting, and because of that, and I did think about that question because he sent that one to me, and I think it's really being true to what yourself and what you do, not trying to paint what you think people want, because otherwise I think that shows, and I think you have to paint what makes you feel happy, what you feel you've put a bit of you into, and that you are adapting and still changing. You're not worrying about what other people think, but staying true to that, and carry on regardless. And I think maybe in terms for younger people, I think a confidence thing is quite hard as well. And I think if you can, find someone else to sell you, because it's really hard to sell yourself. But and I was talking to someone who's really, we were talking about approaching galleries, and I'd actually tagged a couple of galleries in on this show and asked them to the preview, and a couple did respond and say, oh, I don't think we're going to make it out, but thank you for getting in touch, or we've added you to a list. But I'd actually written it like, oh, you know, if you happen to be passing, it would be really nice if you popped in, you know, that sort of thing. Whereas I was talking to this guy and I said, well, actually what you need is someone else saying, you have to go and see the show, and you have to go and see this person, but you're not going to say that about yourself. So you almost need someone else to sing your praises.
You need an agent.
You need an agent. But then an agent, I can see that relationship, I'm not sure how that works, but maybe, maybe that is
very
good.
difficult self-promoting. But also, as you say, and I know from writing that it's actually, you do need to write stuff that you want to write, you need to paint stuff you want to paint, and if you start thinking about who's going to buy this, who the audience is, you're kind of losing.
Yeah, you do, don't you? Yeah, it is. But there's a lot of pressure to do that, I think.
There is.
And if you look at a lot of other work, because it's so easy to see so much on social media now, you can really get a crisis of confidence, and I thought, oh my gosh, it's not good enough, or there's so much better. But I think you just got to shut yourself away from that and do what you do.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a really good note on which to end my questions. But has anybody else here got anything they'd like to ask Sue while she's captive? So.
Can I follow up on that last thing? Just to ask you really simply, who do you paint for?
I paint for myself. I do.
You might say that.
Yeah, I do paint for myself. But I suppose there does also come a point when, you know, it is that balance of, because I've got so much work and I want to paint, and I can't just stack them up in the studio. So, and I do feel like I want them to be seen, and I've had some lovely moments where, and it hasn't been about wanting to sell it, it's just been people's responses to my art. And there was a lady in here before we set this up, and she was just so moved, and she said, I just really resonates with me, and I just can feel what you're seeing, and I just feel that too, and so that was lovely. And I remember 3 or 4 years ago putting a painting up, and there was a guy, and I was setting up, and he came in and looked at them, and he stood at it, and he was really welling up, and he said, it's really moving me, there is something about that painting. And I don't know whether it was the place or whether it was his personal situation maybe or something, but there was something about it, and I've never forgotten that, And I had a medium come in once actually, and then told me that my grandfather painted, and that is true, and that was really eerie.
Did you
really.
not know?
I knew my grandfather painted, and he was good, but he didn't know that. And I don't know whether that could have been just a lucky guess, and I could have said, no, or whether, you know, but I found that quite unsettling.
Yeah.
Because actually my whole family said that no, I'm sure they can if they put their mind to it, but they all say they are not creative and they can't paint. But my grandfather was self-taught and he didn't start painting until he was in his late 50s, 60s. And yeah, he painted in oil and he copied quite a thing, but he could paint. He could make it left-handed. Yeah, and actually my boys are quite creative as well. And Don, my husband, and we're all left-handed. Yeah, so all four of us are left-handed, which does make it a lot easier for the kettle and the toaster and everything.
I'm left-handed, but I still can't paint like this, so never mind.
It's practice though.
Is that what it is?
No, you just got to keep going.
I'll just have to keep trying.
Yeah.
So, anybody else got any more questions? So,
Do you just work exclusively on canvas, or do you use board as well?
I like canvas, and I think because I was painting bigger, canvas seemed the easiest or the obvious thing to paint on, and they're readily available. And I did have a roll of canvas, and I was having them made. But actually, a lot of these are Jackie's canvases that you sold me. Jackie decided she didn't want to paint on canvas anymore, and she said, "Sue, I've got some really big canvases. Do you want to buy them?" And they were really good quality. A couple of them are linen, and they're really lovely. But I've just started doing these small ones on the board, and I'm not even sure what sort of board it was. It's quite light because marine ply is really heavy, and I have used that before. And I did these for specific artist boards, and I bought them from Jackson's, and they weren't cheap, but they weren't too bad. But I've really loved using them. So I'd like to try and get some bigger pieces of that, maybe, and get a carpenter to cut them for me, so I can specifically cut them. Although the two long ones that are there were two pieces of MDF offcut that I found in my studio cupboard that were just left there from when the studio was built, or the building was converted.
A bit heavy.
So MDF, yeah, MDF is heavy, but they were small pieces, so that was fine. And then actually, Carol probably know, I do paint on aluminium, and these two are painted on aluminium. But they're very different to how I painted on aluminium before. There's a lot more paint on those. Often I've used aluminium because it's so smooth, very soft and blended a lot of colour. But these became a lot deeper and a lot more worked.
Does paint soak in at all when you're using a canvas? Because it wouldn't on aluminium.
No, that's very true. No, I mean the paint soaks in on the canvas. On aluminium, it doesn't at all, and that's one of the reasons I quite like painting on aluminium, because it felt, because I use my hands, whether it's through a cloth or rags or just my fingers a lot, it felt so different, but there was a real softness to it. But there is a lot of preparation, so it's a bit like being in a car body repair shop, and I have to wear a mask and clean the metal down and then etch prime it, and that etching primer means it holds on to the paint and the paint. But if that was sort of caught and knocked and gone peel, it would probably, like a car body really, it would start to peel off a little bit. But
I suspect if you've got nothing else, you'd even paint on it.
yes. Yeah, I mean I haven't painted on paper for quite a long time. I use paper for my sketches, and I found this Indian handmade paper, which I really like, because it's got a nice texture, and you can work it. And I haven't used, I don't like any paper that feels too precious, because I'd be too careful with it, because I want to scrub it and just, get on with it.
And there are sketchbooks at the back for anybody who's not seen them already.
Yeah,
Sketchbooks
I've got two or three that I sort of start one and then I start another one, so they're not all full. So you have to work from the beginning.
They're not in any way. And so, sorry, the waveforms are, a lot of them are quite a low, like eyeline and stuff. I wondered if you're doing that consciously, or it's just because you swim a lot that you're almost in the wave. What do you think? Do you think you're doing it consciously, or do you think it's just because?
Well, I think it was unconsciously to start with, and then someone asked me that very same question last year, and that was when I only thought about it, and I thought, why is that wave so close? It looks like you stood right in front of it.
Yeah.
And that is my image, and it is because I go to the sea a lot, I think, and it's that, I don't know if it's that excitement, it's like that, maybe it's just trying to read that wave when I get into wave, it's almost like that snapshot, that glimpse. So I'm sometimes taking in the whole thing, but there is that initial, like, looking at that wave, and maybe I've started to study them more over the years as well, because, you know, every day is different, every wave is different, every night is different, but I think there is very much that viewpoint of just being right in front of the wave, just being there. So it does feel like it's quite low.
Yeah, you feel it
in
a lot in that
water.
one, it, like, you know, you're just sort of...
Yeah, you are in a way, because
Right,
you see
in
that
that
wave,
way,
like,
yeah.
coming, and it is like a washing machine sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's why I love it, because you said about being terrified, and I did a painting called Surrender to the Ocean, which I thought was great, because it was just like, you know, give yourself up to that wave and dive under it, and a few people couldn't even look at it because they thought they were going to drown.
Yeah.
You know, like, I can't even look, and they're like, and it was big, it was massive.
Well, I think it has that impact on me. My daughter keeps saying, "Oh, you must learn to surf."
She said,
Terrifying. So,
What's your initial reaction when someone says, I'd like to commission a painting?
Terror. I think that's the initial reaction. And there was a time when I've got used to dealing with people on commissions, I think a bit more now. So I have like a set thing that I go through when I'm dealing. First, I instinctively know straight away whether I can work with that person. Whether they have a very set idea of what they want, because if they've got a picture in their mind of something they specifically want, I can't see that. I don't know what that is, and then if I don't come up to their expectations, that's not going to work. So there has to be, I'd say there has to be, this makes it sound like I put a lot of demands, but for me to paint it, they have to understand that my process and that it's quite fluid and that it can change, so I don't want anything too precise and prescriptive. So there needs to be an element of movement, and within that,
trust you.
and they have to trust me. But what I tend to do, because I've got like a portfolio book, and it's quite, most people will flip through it and they will connect with certain colours or certain viewpoints and certain paintings, and I can see a pattern, and there's a pattern of what that is, and then I can bring those elements together. And I've only had one that was unsuccessful, but I did still manage to sell it. And it was, but that was where I learned all those mistakes, because I had someone come and wanted a painting of Jabari that I didn't really know that well. And I went and took some photos of it, and I knew what he wanted, and I knew the size. It wasn't particularly big, and he wanted it to match his bedroom, which was peach and purple. And that was when I knew I got a problem. and I did it, and I didn't like the painting at all, but it was Jabari, and there was a wave, and it was there, and he came to collect it, and I just really tried to sell it to him in terms of how I painted it and how I enjoyed it, and it was the way. And the minute he looked at it, I could tell it wasn't what he was expecting, and it wasn't the picture he got in his head. But I said, take it away and put it in your room and just look at it for a couple of weeks. And if you don't like it, bring it back. So it was really easy, and I was prepared for him to do that. And then he rang me about a week later and said he loved it. So I think once he got out of his picture out of his head, and my picture was in there, and he could identify and, and see it for what it was, and that the peach and the purple were there somewhere, the colours, which I would never do again. But it's, so it was fun. But it was a steep learning curve, that one. So yeah, I'm quite, and actually commission's going to be exciting as well. There is an element of like the unknown, but actually, and a couple that I have done have pushed me in a different direction and different. So yeah, I'm open to anything.
What a good point at which to end, lovely. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming along. Thank you, Sue. I've learned more because I interviewed you a few years back, didn't I? You're studio. And I think at that point I adopted the lady who plays with paint. Because
Not a lot's changed, really.
Yeah, not a lot has changed. And you were covered in the stuff, basically. So yeah, it was a lovely
I'm
experience,
doing, not that anyone will probably be interested, but Deb might be there. And there's a B-side social. Have you been to the Yeah, it's B-side, and I'm doing a performance painting next Friday. So I've got an 8x4 panel. And I'm painting live, and I don't know what I'm doing, but there should be a video. I videoed the last one. There's DJs, there's music, a lot of dancing DJs, and they have a couple of artists on site. But I love doing it, I absolutely love it. So that is something totally different. So that will be pushing the boundaries, definitely. I'd like to thank Dawn as well, because I know through all the social media now, although maybe not all of you come through that, but she was sort of labelled a little bit Dawn from Bude and Beyond, but Dawn is much more than that. And she's written some really amazing books about Bude and does a lot of research for her books, and she's got another book coming out next year about a lady that I've known very little about, but I think
she's a tarot artist who died in Bude, so she does have a Bude connection. She lived in Bude for a while, so I'm a
But she was quite famous.
She's very famous in tarot circles, yes, and Americans come over here and ask me to show them around Bude and show me how Pamela lived.
Yeah.
Really, there's not much to show actually. She lived in what is now the Vancouver, Kingdom Park. She also died there, and apparently she's in St Michael's churchyard or something. But there's lots more to her life than that. But I'm not an artist, actually, interestingly. You just spent a lot of time on the lizard. A lady, she had a house called Park Garland, and it's recently bought by the lady who's now having twins. And she's an artist, isn't she?
Wow.
Yeah, lots of things come together. So. Yeah, I do like the research. So it's with the publisher. She's waiting for them to do their stuff.